Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Have you heard that the inaugural Landscape Photography World Awards is now open for entries? Early bird entry is available now at a discounted fee until September 30, 2022. Head to landscapephotographyworldawards.com to find out all the details and how to enter. There's some amazing prizes to be won, and I'll be publishing a book and a calendar with the top images at the end of the competition, so there's plenty to look forward to. Entries close on November 30, 2022, so there's plenty of time to get your entry sorted, but if you want to get into the early birds, do it now. I'd also like to thank the judges who have agreed to work with me and be a big part of the awards. Deb Clark, Victoria Hark, Kieran Stone and William Patino. I certainly couldn't make this competition a reality without their support. Sara Boychuk has been a photographer since she was a child. She photographed on film and was published at a young age. After school, she decided to move into the medical field, following 2 degrees and getting deep into nursing. It was there she was truly reminded how precious and finite life is. Taking pictures freezes a time in life that is never replicated for that brief moment. Time stands still. She cherishes that so deeply and seeks this stillness in everything she does. Living in Canada, Sara gets to enjoy adventures in all seasons. Hiking, kayaking, skiing, snorkelling and a whole lot of general frolicking in nature. We discuss how she made the decision to move into full-time photography and where that journey has taken her, along with a lot more. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Sara. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. It's a nice sunny day here in Sydney. Whereabouts are you?
I am just outside the Rockies, the Canadian Rockies, about an hour away in Calgary.
Okay, cool. I know some people in Calgary, so...
Beautiful place. Have you been?
I have, yeah. I was there in 2019 in December, so midwinter. It was very, very cool in a lot of ways. It was cold, but it was also very cool seeing frozen landscapes. It's not something we get a lot of here. You know, we do have snow up in the highest mountains we've got, which are about 2,900 feet, you know, so not real big compared to being there in the Rockies. And did a couple of cool things like walking on frozen lakes and managed to get up to the Northwest Territories as well and see the aurora, which was nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that was good fun. Talk to me a bit about who you are and why you got started with photography and why landscapes.
All right, I will try to make it as short and sweet as possible. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride. So my photography journey started when I was young, actually. I used to shoot film before shooting film was cool, because that's all we had back in the day. And just shot what I could, and then got really into photography, actually, to the point where when I was about 18, I kind of had to decide between going to like a photography art school or like a medical health science school. And I ended up going for the medical route. Back then, I just wasn't as brave as I would be now. And really fell off the photography train until my second degree. And really what brought it back for me was being in the mountains and seeing what I got to see and just feeling compelled to start telling some stories. And then ever since then, it's been in my hands since.
Fantastic. So what is it that you're chasing in your photography? What is it that really drives the fire or lights the fire inside you around photography?
I love that question. And my favorite thing to do is seek stillness in wilderness. So going out there in the harshest conditions. I love the middle of the winter. I love putting myself in these tricky situations and just finding absolute stillness and meditation out there and capturing the calm in that wilderness, that's that's what drives me to get up at crazy hours and stay up crazy hours and bring heavy gear with me.
So, would you classify yourself as more of an adventure photographer as opposed to landscape, or in the middle between the two?
That's such a great question. And I often think about that because I am capturing landscapes out there, but you're right. I often do have to hike or ski or snowshoe or something. So I'm in the I'm in I'm in the middle. I almost steer away from adventure photography because I don't want people to think I'm tougher than I am or I'm
Sure.
cooler than I am, but yeah, somewhere in the middle for sure.
Cool, cool. So, what's your approach, I guess, to that photography in terms of making art? Um, I guess you start off usually in most people's journeys documenting what they see, and at some point there's a bit of a trigger that goes off in people's heads. It might be gradual and might be where they start, but it's really around how you then start to say, okay, well, now I want to turn this into art as opposed to just here's a photo of a nice scene that I saw. And I guess what I want to know is where that sort of triggered for you, and what really kicked off the artistic bent as opposed to just the documentary bent.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And again, my photography kicked back up when I started hiking and documenting mountains primarily. And I really feel like I hone in on my process now. And I always try to say I don't want to be too close-minded, but when I'm out there, I'm really just looking for it's hard to explain almost, but just peaceful compositions, things that you almost wouldn't know that were difficult to get to. I'm really drawn to like soft colors, soft palettes,
Mm-hmm.
soft moods, as you would say. Um, and really, I wouldn't steer on the side of minimalism, but simplistic enough so that you can take in the landscape, but only seeing minimal colors or only having so much in that composition. So I feel like I'm always in the middle of everything, but really
Sure.
just trying to find peace with those different elements, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And how would you describe your style to somebody that's not seen your work before?
Yeah, I love that question because when I joined Twitter, somebody defined it for me and I really loved it. So I stole it. It's defined as serene, calm, and contemplative. And
Fantastic.
I stole that from them. Um, and again, I think that comes from the colors you see, the compositions you see, kind of what I choose to show. So hopefully that comes across.
Yeah, okay. And how do you feel that's developed over time? And is it still developing, or are you sort of? And I don't want to say you're in a rut or anything, but are you sort of settled and happy with that being your style, or are you trying to extend and move into different aspects of style?
I love that question too, because I'm so happy that that's what people think of me when they see my work. And I'm really glad I can portray something in my work. But I'm always open to trying new things. And I don't know, I think you can create really great art if you just stay open. So always open to trying um, new work. But I mean, I'll pretty much always get what I'm focusing on right now when I'm out there.
Sure, sure. And are you a planner or a more spontaneous shooter? So are you? I mean, obviously, if you're getting off the beaten track and up in some of the backcountry there in the Rockies, you want to do a bit of planning before you go. But are you going out with an idea about, say, there's a particular mountain or particular lake that you want to get to, and you want to, capture that before you go, or are you more reactive to the landscape as you're walking through it?
Definitely a planner in regards to a lot of the hiking and the trekking and the locations I want to go, and just kind of knowing generally what I'm going to get when I go up there. But I think it's important to stay open, because of managing expectations, and also because you may just see something when you're there. I find once I'm settled in and kind of seeing the lay of the land a bit more, then I can um, settle into what I want. So definitely planning, but staying open actually in the field.
Okay. So how much time would you spend, before going out? Are you spending months, days thinking about where you want to be, or, planning your autumn shots in spring and summer, or are you, more about, okay, well, this weekend looks good, the forecast looks good, let's go.
It's such a mix. So, there are some hikes that have just been on my list for so long, and there's just so many. So sometimes it is a year until I get there. So the hike I'm going to do next week technically has been on my list for years. It's just hard to make the time sometimes. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
definitely that for sure. But with the Canadian weather, for example, sometimes you have to be flexible and
Uh-huh.
switch up what you're doing. So it's always a bit of both. I try not to be too hard pressed or serious about it.
Yeah, fair enough. So when you get out into the field, are you spending a bit of time wandering around and just trying to sort out what the composition is going to be, or are you sort of got a pretty good idea about where you want to be and you've done all that planning in, say, photo pills or something beforehand?
Yeah, I love using photo pills. I do just find, I don't know what it is, but I do need to be there. I need to kind of be in the environment, walk around, sit there, ingest it, um, just to really get a sense. I just sometimes notice myself if I don't do that. I kind of wish that I could go back. Sometimes I don't have a lot of time in these places, right? So it really depends, but prefer to plan as much as possible and then get there and just really immerse myself and explore.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess one of the things that a number of people have asked me to ask some of the photographers that I talked about or talk to is how do you feel when you're shooting?
Hmm, that's a great question.
Yeah, I liked it.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I want to say it's always pure joy and bliss, but sometimes I'm so exhausted. I mean, it depends on, again, I do a lot of hiking and trekking, of course, so sometimes I'm just so exhausted, and sometimes I'm really excited. I mean, I got a piece a couple weeks ago that I was just so excited about I could cry. Like I was so happy. And then for the most part, the standard, I just feel like really just in the flow, just really calm, just really like content, and everything else just kind of melts away when I get focused.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the key is, that flow state, I guess, that people get
Mm.
into when they're in the field. And that feeling of just total concentration of going through that process of what you got to do to capture what you want to capture. How much of your success would you attribute to your ability to communicate well?
I think communication in anything is key. So truly, when I started picking up the camera again, I didn't even share my work. I truthfully didn't think anybody was really gonna care, to be transparent, and I kind of just started slowly posting it. And I think what maybe have caught on was because I consider myself a storyteller. So and that sounds really simplistic, but I would pair the photos with stories of the struggles I was going through on those hikes, or what
Yep.
I learned, because I always learned something new. So I kind of paired them together, and I think that's what got people really interested in them. And I don't do that for every photo per se, but those are my most impactful pieces of work when I combine the two. So I'm a big believer in, however you want to get it across with your personality is definitely through
Yeah.
communication. Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
sort of things have you learnt? That to me is something that's really impactful, is when you go out and you go, oh, I've just discovered something new. What sort of things are you talking about when you say you've discovered something?
Oh, it's so funny because it's something different every single time. And I've been doing this for like a decade, but some hikes it'll be, or adventures, it'll be like you're braver than you think you are, or you're a lot stronger than you think you are, or you can push through more than you think you can, or it's okay to have a bad day. Like just anything you could think of, good, bad, ugly, whatever. I really love sharing those little tidbits because even if you don't do those crazy things, they're all relatable to your daily life. So
Yeah, yeah.
lots of things. Yeah.
I really, really like how you sort of linking it to your personal growth and your your own personal story, I guess, as well as the story that you're telling with the images themselves.
Yeah.
Um, how do you, I guess, put that across to somebody that is new to your work and so forth? Without necessarily telling the story in text underneath the image or whatever, how do you kind of try to get that expression across in the images that you're creating?
That's a good question. And I'd almost have to ask people who are newer to my work because I think with my work, at least what I've seen recently is people say, like, wow, it's a great image. But then when I read the description or I talk to you more, it's even more impactful. So I
Sure.
still have a lot of learning and growth to happen there. I mean, of course, we want to convey these things in our imagery, but sometimes, like, I personally love pairing written word with photography.
Sure,
So
sure.
um, that's how I do it right now.
Yeah, cool. How do you define success in your photography?
Ooh, that's a great question. I Photography isn't the only thing that I do, so I feel like I don't have that pressure that maybe some other people do. So for me, the success is about creating what I want to
Hmm.
create and telling the stories that I want to get across autonomously. And success really has felt lately like people saying that they're inspired by what I do, either to get outside more or be a little more brave today, or just improve their lives, even if they don't do exactly what I do, just by me being the person that I am. So really just inspiring other people to live their best life, however that looks.
Sure, that's fantastic. That's
Hmm.
amazing. You mentioned that it's not the only thing you do. So how do you balance your lifestyle, your photography versus, what some people call real life? Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember, early on, somebody saying to me, "Yeah, well, you can't really do photography as a real job." And it's kind of,
I know it's a new world now, though. I feel like certainly. I How do I balance it? I'm very tired all of the time, but I'm so fulfilled by it. So I really am just truthfully very strict with my time, and everything that's important to me makes its way in there eventually. And I do a lot of northern lights chasing up here, so if that means I got to be a little tired the next day, have a little extra coffee, that's no problem. Some days are easier than others, but just really being intentional with my time, I would
yeah,
say.
sure. So what is it that you do outside of photography?
Yes, something completely different. So I am a Canadian manager for a private healthcare company. So I'm a registered nurse by practice and
Mhm.
I currently manage nurses. So I'm still in the healthcare field right now, which
Just not
allows
as
me to just
hands-on
have,
as before. Yeah.
yeah, and then I can just have my full creative autonomy on the side. So busy,
Nice.
busy.
Nice. Do you try to make any money out of your photography, or is it just? I guess how do you see it? Is it just a bit of a side hustle slash hobby, or is it more of a passion, and you're driven to eventually make it your main source of income?
Yeah, I definitely have revved it up in the past year and a half or so, and actually being able to make some income from it, which is great. I feel like going out of my comfort zone and being on social media more has really opened up opportunities. So I will take on adventurous portrait clients. I will, um, sell prints and of course digital collectibles in the Web3 space. So it's revving up. I also just restarted my blog again just to kind of have that more long form discussion with my work. So I definitely see different paths. And I would love to. I love the Northern Lights, and I love showing people the Northern Lights. So hopefully, I can embed that as well. So just slowly, just keeping it really true to me.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What's I guess you talked a little bit about having what was it adventure portrait clients.
Yeah.
So talk to me a bit about what adventure portraiture is.
Yeah, I mean it's basically like any other portrait work, but I love people who want to hike with me and then I'll take their pictures or
Okay.
couples who want photos up on a mountain, say, versus in a studio, like, just spicing up the portraits a little bit because we've got no shortage of good backdrops here. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I've seen people, they get a helicopter up to the top of a mountain to do a marriage proposal or something like that, and
yeah.
they take a photographer with them, which must be quite an interesting sort of adventure. Is that something you've done yourself, or?
Not yet, but I actually just moved to this location almost a year ago now, and they're much more popular here. So certainly would be open if anyone's adventurous and wanting to come. Would
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah.
How do you price your work? This is a question I think a lot of photographers ask themselves and ask others. Ha- if somebody wants to buy your work, how do they engage, and how do you actually set your price?
Pricing question. So it depends on what it is, of course. For prints, I try to keep it by commission only right now so that I can see it, have a touch on it, look at it, and send it out, which is a very long process.
Yep.
So that pricing, of course, is a little bit more, just being able to, of course, cover the cost of the print and get it to that individual. Um, Portrait sessions, again, I'm pretty flexible, and I would say like my most expensive work is my like digital collectibles on Web3 space. So I, because it's not full time, I wouldn't give out my numbers because I don't want. I
Yeah.
know
No,
people who are,
I'm not asking for numbers. I'm more interested in the process around how you actually, how would you peg your work? Do you
yeah,
base it on the amount of effort that you put into a shot, the emotional
yeah,
connection you've got with a shot? How do you think about it in terms of
great.
putting a price on it? Because there's lots of different ways to come up with that number. The number per se doesn't matter though.
Okay, good. Because some people are big numbers people, and I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm very
I
much
know some
like,
people are probably listening to this going, tell us the number, tell us the number.
I know, and that's just not me. So it's the same with gear kind of thing. But uh For work, I do put a bit of a quote unquote premium on stuff that takes more effort, only because, and that might be controversial, but honestly, if I'm going out there and I'm hurting and I'm in pain and I'm struggling for it, I am going to put a little bit of a premium on it, versus like a parking lot shot, and that's just because that's what I do. And then depending on other work, it just again depends on maybe the time involved and things like that. But a lot of what I do, I just talk to either the client, collector, this, that, see what they're looking for, and then I go from there because I have that flexibility right now.
Sure. And I guess a part of it might also be the uniqueness of the composition or something like that as well.
Yeah, certainly.
Where do you like to shoot the most? Obviously, the Rockies is, a massive area, and I'm not asking for your secret spots, but give me a general direction. Is it Banff, Canmore? Is it Jasper? Is it further north up in the further reaches?
That's a good question. I love shooting in Kananaskis. I love shooting in, Banff, Jasper, anywhere in the Rockies. There's so many hikes here. I haven't gotten bored, and I've done a lot of them. So I really like just shooting here. I'm so happy that this is my home. I also really enjoy the north, which I know you mentioned you visited. I need to spend more time up there, but that's a really special landscape place too, I think.
Yeah, totally. And, particularly some of the areas in the Northwest Territories are quite different to, that when you get into the sort of, what do they call it, the Krumholtz sort of landscape where the trees can't grow more than about 1.5 feet, 3 foot maybe, in height. And, you've got the tundra and everything around. It is a very different landscape to what you see in the Rockies.
Mm-hmm.
What's the furthest you've traveled to get a shot?
A lot of my treks are 100 kilometers at a time. So if we consider those, but if we're talking actual travel, the Dolomites were on my list for a very long time. And I finally got to go this summer. And the primary reason was for photography and hiking. There was really good food though. So
okay, cool. Have you got any favorite locations that just keep drawing you back? And if so, not asking for the secret spots, but are there, what is it about those spots that draw you back? Is it that you haven't nailed it? Is it it just something that you really want to just keep shooting?
Yeah, there's a few special mountains where I just feel like the views are world class and I could go a million times even if I've got shots. I'm particularly drawn to any landscape with ice. So either like frozen lakes, frozen bubbles, ice caves, snow caves. I just think a lot of people don't love shooting in the winter, so I love getting out there and it's really quiet. But it's just such a fleeting thing that I'm really, really drawn to it. And I'm really excited that it's almost winter right now.
Mm-hmm. So I guess where you live influences what you shoot. Obviously, you just rattled off mountains and, the ice caves and frozen lakes and so forth. Does it influence how you shoot?
Does it influence how I shoot? I would like to think not, but our styles are always influenced by so many different things. Even when I travel somewhere else, I do carry my styles with me and what I'm looking for. Excuse me, but that's a good question. What do you think about that question?
Well, I think some people, for me, I do a lot of seascapes. So at sunrise, sunset, more sunrise than sunset, but that means that I'm always working, usually, in most conditions, with high dynamic range, which then sort of says, okay, well, I can either use grad filters, which I don't own, and because I don't own them, I then kind of have to bracket shots. So that's kind of what I'm talking about in terms of, where I live, and therefore what I shoot influences how I shoot to a certain degree. And I'm just sort of trying to, link those relationships between place, subject, and technique.
That's actually really interesting. And I'd have to see what other people say, because I'm in such a zone right now where I'm shooting the same thing, the same concepts, and then even my travel plans are all based around the same concepts. I haven't shot something different in a while, but certainly it would change. Of course it would. Mountains require certain, lenses. Definitely, again, sunrise, sunset, and night photography. So a lot of that's transferable, but I'm so used to shooting like big mountains, big caves, things like that. So there's certainly some gear and technique involved that I probably don't even think about because I do it so often.
Yeah, and I guess, and that's what interests me is, what are the things that you don't normally think about, because they're just so automatic, and that's one of the reasons why I asked that question, is because for a lot of people, well, I go and shoot these, let's say it's waterfalls, I go and shoot these, so I'm always shooting, or mostly shooting that, maximum 1 to 2 second exposure. I'm always, making sure that I'm managing, shooting for the highlights, but managing what I'm doing in the shadows and so forth, because those sorts of environments require you to shoot a certain way. If you want to, I mean, I've seen some very creative stuff around, zooming right into details on waterfalls, for example, and mountains and so forth. So, you can still be quite unique in what you do if you're creative enough about it. And I'm not, sort of saying anyone's not being unique or anything, but there's lots of different ways of shooting, and I'm just interested, as I say, in that link between location, subject, and technique, and how they interrelate in your mind.
Such a fascinating question, and I was thinking about that while you were speaking as well. I recently bought a telephoto and I started lugging it up on hikes, because just trying to get, again, just like you said, just trying to switch it up and get different things. And yeah, sometimes you'll bring like different pieces of gear to switch it up. I think sometimes we do get really used to what we're shooting and we can almost go on autopilot. So you got to keep it fun and switch it up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's the reason I asked that, is just to try and draw out, okay, how much do you think about what it is that you do, and how much does where you live actually or where you shoot most, I guess, influence that. And I'm also interested in whether it's your style and the way that you want to shoot that influences most, or your reaction to the landscape that influences most, I guess.
That's also really interesting. I feel like, I feel like for me, I don't want to say it's on autopilot, but I am just so zoned in on what I want to shoot. I really don't think about it. And I actually have gotten better about stopping to think about things sometimes, because when you're adventuring and you're sometimes shooting on the go, you have to capture what's in front of you. Don't know, you're not always spending a lot of time thinking about your technique. Sometimes you don't have time. So that's really interesting. But I've been able to slow down this year a little bit and really hone in on that kind of stuff and think about it more.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think that's really important, is, taking that time out to think about what it is that you're doing, and, a little bit about why you're doing it, so that you're not, getting out and, just taking snapshots, or just going into, as you say, sort of that autopilot mode, and just sort of going, okay, well, I'm just doing the same old thing that I normally do. Yeah, because everyone gets into their comfort zones. I know that, I know the settings and I know how to get what I want. But there's sometimes when I go, okay, well, let's change it up and do something different, so instead of just doing a normal quarter of a second flow shot of some, the sunrise and the water flowing. Let's move to a little bit earlier in the day, get there extra early before there's a lot of light, and sit there and do a 7 or 8 minute exposure, and so which is a completely different look, completely different style of photo, but still may contain a lot of the elements that you're already working with. What do you think the practice of photography has taught you about nature?
I've always loved nature. I grew up outside. I grew up in the country. But for me, it just brings me that much closer. A lot of the places that I'm able to go often don't have a lot of people, and you really just get to observe nature in its state, and it just makes me appreciate it that much more and really want to protect it that much more. And really interestingly, started bringing my partner out with me, and I can see it's had that effect on him too. So that's why I keep sharing my stories and keep showing people what I do. Because even if I get to see it every day, I think I forget that not everybody gets to.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important message, is sharing your work is not necessarily about, boasting about where you live or what you've been able to shoot. It's actually sharing it to show people, this is something that I've been able to see. And, I think it's just fantastic that people can relate and connect to other people's work, even though they've never been in that landscape themselves.
Absolutely. And it invites people in as well that, don't have access or can't get to these places. It connects us. I mean, we're talking across the world right now, right? So I just think it's a really special way to connect. I think that's what I enjoy.
Totally. In terms of the hikes that you're doing, you're talking about a 100-kilometer hike, for example. What are you carrying with you? How do you pare yourself down? And how long has it taken you to nail getting that pack just the right amount of weight so that you're not staggering around? You're going to be able to get out there and get back.
Yeah, it's heavy, and I would rather take gear than more food. So I bring one camera body. I bring usually two lenses, so 24 to 70, and then my telephoto, which goes up to 200.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I can bear it down to, and tripods, even though they're also terribly heavy. But then luckily, now that my partner's getting into it, he will carry a camera body and two lenses, so we can kind of scheme the system a little bit. But yeah, the minimum I'll do for gear is
it's not
one
nice
camera, two lenses.
Nice to have a Sherpa with you, is it?
Well, we can just get a little bit more range that way. But honestly, I can pretty much be happy with my 24 to 70 most times. Sometimes I want a 14, but for the most part, that lens has seen some places.
Yeah, cool. What's the most memorable experience you've had in photography?
That's such a tough question. I've had so many, and that almost sounds like I'm boasting saying that, but every time I think I've had the ultimate experience, something else happens. But really what's fresh in my mind was a couple weeks ago, I really wanted to go to this one particular place in BC. So we had to drive really far, and it's quite a hike. And I was really stressed because there was supposed to be a thunderstorm, but it was the only weekend that I could get it done. Um, and I was trying to shoot for a project. And when we got up there, we did get nailed with a hailstorm. But what came out of it was just, one of my favorite pictures I've taken. And so why I love situations like that is because sometimes things don't always go right, but there's always beauty in it. And it was so rural that we were the only ones that got to experience that. So the fact that I was able to capture it and then bring it home for everybody, it was really special. So that makes me really happy.
Nice, nice. Do you have any horror stories from your photo career?
Oh, lots of horror stories too. I mean, in the Yukon a couple of years ago, we're just trying to get out, hike and shoot, and I sprained my ankle when we got stuck in a snowstorm. Didn't have any good shots from that day. There's been a few hikes where I just had to turn around because it was, conditions were bad, too dangerous, seen a few bears on the trail, stuff like that. No shortage of fun stuff out there.
That's something that we don't really have to worry about here in Australia, for example. Maybe snakes and spiders and things like that. But
Yes.
how do you handle coming face to face with a bear? Have you ever come face to face, or has he just been up the trail and you've sort of turned around and gone the other way?
Yeah, I'm so jealous because I feel like a lot of other people's photography experiences are so much more pleasant. But yes, I've been about 5 feet away from a bear. So we were doing this hike in BC, went to the summit for sunrise, got our shots, came back down. And when you come back down, they're called switchbacks. So you kind of go straight, take a turn, so on
Yep.
and so forth. And just going pretty fast on the down, and then did a turn, and there was a bear right there having breakfast like 5 feet away.
Wow.
And I mean, you always know they tell you to stay calm, but when they're right in front of you and they're so big,
Different
I mean,
story. Yeah.
it's a different story. They're so beautiful, but luckily he just wanted breakfast and we just had to wait it out. So no problems there. But honestly, whenever I'm out there, I'm always looking behind my back just in case.
Yeah, I remember my daughter. She spent some time in Canada and came across a bear. She was actually coordinator at one of the summer camps there in not far from Calgary. I say not far, probably about 200 kilometres away from Calgary. But yeah, they came sort of face to face with a bear in the camp. It was a juvenile and came wandering through, and they were a bit freaked out.
It's scary. They're pretty big in person, but for the most part, they're doing their
Yeah,
own
they're
thing.
not really interested in what we're doing. I guess they're just
No.
trying to get around and get something to eat normally.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things I'm interested in for everyone that I talk to is the importance of goals and projects. And I know some people, define projects differently. For me, a project could just be one shot that you get. It could also be part of a larger portfolio of work. I guess, how do you define your goals, and how do you work towards building those projects and managing your time and effort in completing them?
Yeah. And I do think the balance of goals and being open can lead you to the best opportunities. And, this year I've really just been focusing, my goals have just been to get the best shots ever. I moved close to the Rockies. I mean, it's been a wild year of just getting shots that I've always wanted to. And I'm going to continue to do that. I have a long list on my phone that never ends. Um, I also have other bigger goals of, facilitating, workshops or help for people who want to come and experience it, maybe people who like hiking a little more. I really love showing people the lights. I think seeing their face for the first time is so special. And I love teaching people how to get a shot they can at least go home with. So integrating that hopefully. And, I just love talking to people about photography again, because I think at least like for my work and the impact I want to have, sometimes the words have to go with the shots. So really just focusing on, growing the blog in written form and also speaking about it. So that's where I'm at. Mm-hmm.
Cool. What's your routine when you get on site? You've, hiked 50 kilometers, for example, and you're at this beautiful lake with a mountain behind it and you're seeing those reflections. Are you straight into it, drop the tripod down, put the camera up and away you go? Or are you more contemplative and take your time around setting things up first?
Yeah, it depends. I really prefer to do the contemplative route. Usually need a little break, get my surroundings, walk around and get the best composition. And of course, depends on the time of day.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that little bit of like settling in as much as possible. Sometimes you don't have that grace period,
The
and you
lights
just
going
gotta.
off and
So you don't always have that, but yeah, if I had a preference, I would definitely. I just feel like I don't know. It just takes me a little while just to see my surroundings and make sure I go home with something I'm happy with. So yeah, usually take a break, settle in, have a snack, and then start looking for compositions and where I am.
Cool. So you've nailed your shot and you've got home, you've hiked 50 Ks back and got in the car and got back home. Are you too exhausted to get into editing straight away and you leave it for a while, or are you so excited that you got to get into it?
This is such a funny question because I feel like I learned a couple weeks ago that I'm not the only one. So sometimes I'll get home, you know, edit right away because I'm so excited and I can see it in my head.
Yep.
Other times I'll wait a whole year. I am so
Wow.
backlogged, like in my in it's so bad. And I was talking it out with a few other artists, and I think sometimes I don't know, I can't force it. And as soon as it comes, I can edit it like right away. But sometimes they just need to sit and simmer and it's very unproductive, but it's just the process.
Yeah. So are you tweaking? Are you, you know, making major edits? Are you, doing lots of focus stacking and, lots of layers, or are you more into minimalist editing?
Great question. I lean more on the minimalist edit side, but I know there are people who are more minimalist than me. So a theme of this talk seems to be I'm in the middle. So I definitely go, I mostly hang out in Lightroom. I'm not big into Photoshop. The reason why I work so hard for these pictures is to try to get something that felt close to what was there, just
Sure.
personally. So really I, minimal colors, tones, really looking for like those soft tones and colors and just color preferences. And, for like the Northern Lights, I have like a certain um, way that I like them color graded, but that's usually where that will end.
Yeah. Okay. What about printing? You mentioned, doing prints for clients. Do you print your own work for your own walls, or?
No, so I do use a printer and I use a couple, one from the States and one from Canada. And my favorite thing is metal prints. So
Yep.
I always love telling people about those because those are so impactful and so
I'm addicted
beautiful.
to acrylics myself. So
Oh, yes. Yeah, just something so extra special about those. But yeah, again, prints are um, mostly handled externally. I'm not
yeah.
that skilled in the office.
Well, I guess I mean, it's a bit of a dark art, and I'm certainly
Mm.
service myself. Are you doing a lot of work to prep an image for printing beforehand, and what's the conversation like, I guess, with your printing services?
Yeah, I've learned a lot online and some really talented friends on prepping images uh, for print. So if I ever do get a request, I do kind of do a little extra pass, an extra session just to make sure everything's bright enough, sharp enough, what have you. And my monitor is not the best, so that's a
Yeah,
whole other issue.
calibration's
Yeah,
important.
yeah, and it's just the monitor that I have as well. We're looking at a new one, but regardless, that's okay. And honestly, my printers have been really great for the most part. I've never seen an image that I'm unhappy with. Maybe I'm just lucky and just tweaking it enough that I'm happy with it. But I usually just do it when the order comes in.
Sure, sure. Have you ever hit a creative wall? And if so, how do you
Mhm.
handle it?
Yeah, I don't want to say often, but I feel like we should normalize hitting walls. I Once I moved to a beautiful place, I thought I'd be inspired 24/7, and some days I'm not. And even if I hike to a beautiful place, like sometimes I really just am exhausted creatively, or we've just been out shooting for weeks at a time, or the northern lights have been so frequent that I'm just, I feel like I'm at a block. So yeah, I think it's totally normal and totally common. And what I find has been helping is just going to other places, and kind of like we were talking about before, going to places I normally wouldn't shoot. We normally go north. A couple weeks ago, we went south, and just changing up your environment, I think, can really help, at least for myself, anyways.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it can kickstart, a bit of a fresh location, or a fresh look at something different. For example, I mean, one of the ways that I try to do that is I mix it up between sort of getting into the city, because we're here in Sydney. You've got the harbour and all the rest of that, so there's usually water involved. Sorry about that. I'll have to edit that out. Usually water involved, but I tend to mix it up between getting into the city, doing a bit of street photography, doing seascapes, going and doing waterfalls and whatever, and just that in itself, that's aside from then longer trips where I might get out of town and go somewhere really different. Is a really good way of, I think, mixing it up and just keeping yourself and your creativity fresh. Because, you do, if you keep going to the same spot, you're going to get the same shot.
Yes, absolutely.
So what do you think is the biggest challenge facing photography right now?
I think photographers have had always so many challenges, and I really respect so many talented colleagues that I'm lucky enough to know. And something that I see on the outside, I mean, for myself too, it doesn't bother me as much, is that I still don't think it's valued the way that it should be. And part of that could be because of communication techniques, but it's really, I know how much work goes into it, whether you hike or not. I know how much work goes into it. And yeah, people need to not be shy about inviting people in, to letting them know how much work they're putting in.
Yeah, I think it's important to let people know that. It's very difficult sometimes and this goes to where people, professional photographers in particular, trying to get clients to understand the value that is placed on the work, because a lot of people just think in terms of phone photography, or even point and shoot photography. Well, you just turn up, you push a button, happy days. There's your photo. That's all you got to do. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine, and he was asking whether or not I'd be interested in shooting a sporting team with them. And I said, well, yeah, what are you going to do with the images and so forth? And he said, well, I'm happy to pay you. And I said, well, what are you happy to pay me? Because you might not like what I tell you. I'm going to charge, you know. And I didn't, you know, end up charging him. Went and did the shoot and whatever, but you know, because he's a friend. But and they weren't, you know, using the images commercially. It was more just for the team. But that conversation, you know, I showed him just the Google search average hourly rate for photographers in Australia, you know, showed him that, and it's nearly $350 an hour, which surprised me that it was, you know, quite as high as that myself. But you know, if that's the average, what are the expensive guys charging? You know, and but yeah, it kind of blew his tiny little mind in sort of saying, okay, well, yeah, it's a little bit more expensive. And he said, how do you charge that? Well, I said, yes, there's the time going out and doing the shoot, but then there's the processing after. So, you know, let's say I take 150 shots, you know, that could be, you know, say even if I went minimal and I nailed everything in camera, you know, probably 10 minutes per shot minimum. So, you know, 150 times 10, we're talking 1,000, you know, 50 minutes. It's a lot of time to spend on, you know, putting your images together. And that's where he sort of started to click. And I think, you know, that's a message that a lot of people, you know, don't register sometimes.
Absolutely. Yep. And again, I think along with that too, just a little bit of a challenge I see again is because there is so much variability, which I mean, that happens in this kind of freelancing creative world. So just being able to really nail down your why and communicate that effectively, then I think that helps. That's certainly a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think the future is for photography?
I know that not everybody's going to like this answer, and maybe some people will click out. I do think there's a great opportunity to have your work, you know, digitally collected or exploring the Web3 space. Um, so that's where my brain primarily is focused right now. I've seen some incredible opportunities, conversations, things happen with photography there. Even just like we just said, telling people the actual value of photography. Other than that, I mean, the sky is the limit. I think sometimes I almost worry because of, like you said, mobile devices and things like that. Will the value decrease? But I honestly think with all the different avenues that you can utilize now, like look at yourself, like podcasts, you have workshops, you have your website, you have so many different things. I think that almost increases, I mean, it certainly increases the value. So even if photographers branch them, I know it's so hard, but just branching themselves out to doing all of these different things, I think that's where it's going. Like, you know, you're a photographer, but you also have all of these other things to you, which just enhances your values. So sky's the limit with all the different platforms and things out there.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the social media platforms in particular and the part that they play. Do you see them as being positive, neutral, or negative influences?
A mix of everything.
Yeah,
I think
they can be all three.
yeah, a mix of everything. I mean, I think again, they're positive because we have the power to connect people to nature and tell sensitive stories and connect with each other. I've met so many amazing people that I wouldn't have otherwise. But of course, there's always going to be a negative side of either you're hard on yourself, maybe you're not growing like the person beside you is, or
Yep.
somebody, it looks like they're always going cool places, right? So there's always going to be positive and negatives to it. It's how you manage it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you manage it?
I'm probably not on it enough. And I feel like I started it too late anyway. So I don't really have that same problem. I manage it by, and maybe I'm the wrong person to ask because it's not my full time right now yet, what have you. I'm able to turn it off when I need to. And when I'm outside photographing, a lot of the times I don't have service. Like I depends on the day, but I'm pretty good at spending time unplugging because I can. And
Yeah.
that brings me back to real life and puts my brain into perspective again.
Yeah, that's cool. So do you think that enforced unplugging really works for you?
It does work for me. And I know I have a lot of photographer friends that do it more full time. And I know it's so hard for them to unplug, but just I would really encourage people to have people outside of social media or have people you can talk to. Um, spend an hour a day, go to the gym, go for a walk, don't have your phone on because you could be on here all day 24/7. And I
Oh,
really don't think that that's healthy.
no, I totally agree. I mean, I took a weekend with my wife up the coast this weekend, just gone, and took some nice shots. I think I posted one video of while we were away, which was a nice sunset. Showed the back of the camera, showed the sunset. That was basically it. Everything else
Yeah,
went by the wayside.
that's great. And do you find it hard to un unplug like that?
Yeah,
Like, do you feel like
sometimes.
yeah?
Yeah, you do have that, I guess, feeling of, and it's not so much the FOMO of missing out on something. But you
Mhm.
do have that feeling that, uh, and in certain platforms, you can see your engagement drop off if you're not present, and the algorithms in particular Instagram and Twitter, they're geared to keeping you connected to that drip feed of content. And if you're not engaging with it and you're not engaging with other people and they're not engaging with your work, well, if you're not doing the first, the former doesn't happen. So, your engagement drops right off, and it's very difficult if it is your business, I think, to and you want to get your work out there, you want to let people know what you're doing, and you want to let people know about your workshops, or you want to let them know about a competition you're running or something. It can be quite a challenge. But I think for me, unplugging's a very healthy thing too. I don't really have a major problem doing it if I choose to, and it's making the choice that's probably the hardest part, to say, okay, well, it's just time to take a break and get away for a little while. What's your favorite thing about being a photographer?
My favorite thing, I have a few favorite things. I love getting outside. I mean, I'd get outside regardless, but I love that extra push to get outside. I love sharing the stories again, the good, bad, and ugly, and seeing people's reactions and connecting to people. And again, just inspiring people. I think at first I used to think sharing my art was a selfish endeavor, and that's why I didn't really do it. And then now seeing that it can impact people is one of my favorite things and why I keep going for sure.
Sure, sure. What's your least favorite thing about being a photographer?
Do I even have a least favorite thing? Um, that's a
Cost
really
of
good
gear.
question. Yeah, you know what? It's so bad I don't even think about that kind of stuff. My least favorite thing is when I don't get what I want. And I try to really, like I mentioned before, like really try to manage my expectations and have a little bit of flexibility. But, sometimes it just doesn't pan out the way that you fully want it, or you don't get the
Yep.
situation, the lighting, this, that. So that can be frustrating, especially when you've been staying up waiting for the lights for days or something like that. Yeah, it can get you down.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any photographers that you think I should be talking to?
Grant, I was looking at who you've already interviewed, and you've interviewed so many amazing people already. This is a lot of hours for me to catch up on, but I'm gonna
Well,
I'm gonna have to send you.
you got plenty of time when you're hiking, surely.
Exactly. I was looking through, and just so many people I know and love their work. So I'm gonna have to send you a list after, because I'm impressed
That's
at how
fine.
many people you've interviewed already.
Well, you're number 64, I think, now. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not a patch on Matt Payne, though, with his 280 odd episodes or wherever he's up to. He
Yeah,
started a bit before me, though. So.
yeah, and that's really amazing, and it's something really unique. And you know, I'm curious, like, why you kind of alluded to about why did you start a podcast, and what's your goal? Like, you want to get to 100, 200? What do you think?
uh, I guess why I started was we were in a very harsh lockdown, couldn't move more than 5 kilometres away from the front door. I live in suburban Sydney, and it's not very inspiring for my type of photography. Yeah, I know there are photographers that go out and shoot telegraph poles and street lights and, shopping centre car parks and shopping trolleys and whatever. And that's their thing. That's just not my thing. So I was kind of looking for, and it ended up being, what was it, 165 days like that. So I was just looking for a creative outlet because I couldn't go out and stand knee deep in surf and take seascape shots. So it was really born out of that lockdown and born out of the desire to do something creative. And I thought, well, I've done a little bit of sound production in the past before, so I got a bit of an idea about what I'm doing. Not much, but a bit. And it was really just about that creative outlet and a desire, I guess, to talk to other creative people and find out what made them tick a little bit. And I guess what the goal has ended up being, that the initial goal was really just not be bored, not be I guess stifled by the lockdown that we had, and to be more creative. Or where it's going, I guess I see it also as a means that I can use it to promote my work, promote other people's work, which to me is also an important thing, because I really get a lot of joy out of seeing other people get success too. It's important, I think, as and I use the term very loosely, a community of photographers to support one another in what we're doing. And it's a way of giving back a bit to that community. It's a way of promoting my own stuff in certain ways. So hopefully everybody benefits somewhere along the line.
That's great. I didn't mean to turn it on you, but I was
No,
just
no, that's
very
fine.
curious.
It's meant to be a conversation. It's not just meant to
Good.
be me interrogating you, as I said before the podcast.
Great. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but that's fascinating. And yeah, you've got quite the roster already here.
All right. Well, I've got one last question for you, and for a lot of my
Mhm.
listeners, it's the most important one. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No, I don't even have to think about it. Do you?
I don't care if it's there. I won't pick it off.
If I won't order one though, so it's not.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it's not something that I seek out. But if there's a Hawaiian pizza there, it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not going to say no to pizza, but definitely would not order it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk to me, Sarah. It's been absolutely wonderful getting to know you a little bit better and learning more about what you do and how you do it. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, and likewise, Grant, your work is absolutely beautiful, and I really enjoyed connecting across the world in this way. I mostly, social media wise, live on, Twitter, Instagram, sometimes TikTok. It's at Sara Boychuk _ website, saraboychuk.com. Easy peasy.
No worries. I'll make sure there's links to everything in the show notes. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work and this podcast on grantswinburnephotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.